Welcome back to the One Question Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Steph Garcia Cichosz, and I am so delighted to be joined today by Gary Stokan, President and CEO of the Peach Bowl. Gary, congratulations. You are retiring at the end of this spring. This is going to be your last Peach Bowl. Congratulations on 47 years in the industry, 28 years leading this bowl. Thank you for joining us.
Well, Steph, thanks for having us. I looked up the word retirement in the dictionary, and it said ceasing to work. And when I made my announcement, I said, well, I guess I can't retire because I haven't worked a day in my life in 47 years. I've been in sports, and it's been a passion, and so I'm very, very blessed.
I have a very simple question for you to kick this off. You are a basketball guy. You played basketball. You coached basketball at NC State. You've worked at Converse, Adidas with some of the biggest names in basketball specifically. How did you get into football?
Well, it's funny. The football guys always ask me, Gary, you don't know whether the football is stuffed with feathers or air. And I just laugh and I say, everything is sports marketing. It's all business. And even to that point, I've taken everything I learned from coaching and just applied it to business everywhere I've been, whether it's been coaching Adidas, Converse, my own sports marketing company, or now at the Peach Bowl and the Atlanta Sports Council. So it translates and transfers very easily. You know, most organizations, you need roles to be played on a team, and you just have to recruit people to specific roles. So in basketball, you recruit a point guard to bring the ball up the court and knock free throws in at the end. You don't want him rebounding and playing the center on defense. You don't want the center bringing the ball up the court. You don't want your quarterback playing tight end. You don't want your tight end playing guard. So in business, you need sales, marketing, legal, finance, and operations. And so you recruit people to those specific roles. I like acronyms as an old coach. So my internal business acumen is teamwork. And I use the acronym TEAM. Teamwork, we all have a job to do. Everybody works with each other together. No job too big, too small. That's the T. The E is empowerment. We recruit you to play a specific role. We empower you. You have to accept that role. We let you play that role, and we empower you to play that role. If we're going to hand you the ball, though, you got to be A in team accountable to the rest of the team. So don't fumble, right? So do your job. And then M is that's the way we manage the process through teamwork, empowerment, accountability, management. And then externally, the way we go to market is through care. C, the customer is always right. Treat the customer with class. A, bring a great attitude to everything you work on. Because if you have a great attitude, you got a chance of making something great happen. If you have a bad attitude, I guarantee you something bad's going to happen. R in care is relationships. We want to develop long-lasting, deep relationships so we can do long-term business for 20, 30 years with you. And then E is excellence. We want to strive for excellence in everything that we do. We don't always reach it, but we're striving for it all the time. So that's the internal philosophy of team, the external philosophy of care. And then my own personal business philosophy is God's gift to you is life. Your present to him is using the talents that he's blessed you with and maximizing those God-given talents. And so I've always developed, the way I look at business, when you want to start a business and put it on a strong foundation, and that foundation needs to be on rocks, which is R is relationships, O is opportunities. You always got to look for opportunities. C is you got to be very competitive. K is you got to have great knowledge of everything about your business. And S, you got to be very strategic. And so I've always looked at that as the way to look at your business and how you're going to create your vision, how you're going to move forward with your organization and your company.
That is so fascinating. I really hope that you have all of these acronyms, pasted up around your office, around the Peach Bowl offices. What is so fascinating about your tenure with the Peach Bowl as the president and CEO is the diversity of tasks and projects and knowledge that you've brought to the role. You've expanded this from just a single bowl game. Now we have a kickoff to start the season. You were part of bringing the College Football Hall of Fame to Atlanta. You have done so much in terms of economic development, charitable giving for the city of Atlanta. again, this is a simple question, but what exactly is the role of a bowl game president and CEO? Because you've done a lot in this single role.
Well, first off, thank you for the kind compliments. I appreciate it. You've done your homework.
You're a fascinating person.
Well, thank you. I don't know if my wife would agree with you, but no, I've always, again, using that acronym of ROCKS, I've always looked at things and said, okay, where can we build relationships? Where can we look at opportunities? You have to look around the corner and see what's next, what's coming next. Again, you got to be very competitive if you want to be successful. And then you got to know, and that knowledge is very important. And unfortunately, that's where we suffer right now in college athletics, that the presidents are in leadership positions, but they haven't cast a vision of where college athletics should go. And when you don't have a vision, you have chaos. And God bless the presidents, they're put in positions they shouldn't be put into because they don't have the knowledge that we talked about, because they're running billion-dollar corporations on their campus. And so they can't know everything that's going on in collegiate athletics. But yet we put them in positions to make the decisions to affect college athletics. And so we've lost our way in college athletics. I feel terrible about that because I've been a benefactor, getting a scholarship to play basketball and getting my education for free. And then the relationships I developed helped me to get into society and be a productive member of society with getting employment and getting a job. So, we've got a lot of work to do in college athletics, and I'm afraid there's not a focus. There's not anybody that's really looking at, let's say, college football on the whole and trying to develop what the solutions are to the problems.
There's a great quote from Nick Saban, your friend, who says Gary has always understood the power of relationships in college football, and I'm sure just across the board in general. I'm curious, this understanding relationships, is that something that was natural for you, when you were younger, when you were a student athlete yourself? Was that something you were good at, or did you have to kind of learn and practice that?
What a great question. Haven't thought about that, but, I think it comes from my parents who instilled in me, number one, is you always want to treat people kind and with respect. And if you do that, you have a chance of building a relationship. Secondly is, it's better to give than receive. So I played point guard. I always enjoyed passing the ball to get a score rather than scoring myself. They also instilled in me, if you're going to do something right, do something right the first time. So doing things the right way, giving back, being kind, being respectful, all those things, I guess, were baselines or foundations to put me in the role that I've been in now.
I'm really curious. There's so much we could go into. This could be an hours long conversation, but a project that we mentioned this at the top, that you spearheaded, was bringing the College Football Hall of Fame to Atlanta. Talk to me about that process and the stakeholders that you had to navigate, the opinions.
That's why I don't have any hair.
Exactly. I'm sure you've had plenty of those kinds of projects in your tenure, but talk to me about that one specifically.
Yeah, that was really interesting. Again, going back to my philosophy of rocks, I looked at opportunities, and I went through the College Football Hall of Fame induction ceremony back in the early 2000s. And as I walked through, I said, this is very stagnant. It's not very interactive. It's not very fan friendly. It needs an uptick of technology. And I said, in South Bend, Indiana, which is nothing to denigrate South Bend, but it's not a convention town, right? So you don't have a lot of people going through it. And the people that go through it are mainly going to Notre Dame. And so they want to see Notre Dame's Hall of Fame. So I said, this would be great in Atlanta, where, we're trying to make Atlanta the capital of college football. There's only one Hall of Fame. To get this would give us a differentiation point. And again, it was about giving back to college football. And so we started the process in 2010 when their lease was up. I, as the CEO of Atlanta Hall Management, a company that I created, signed the 30-year license to move the College Football Hall of Fame to Atlanta, which was not easy, but That was the easy part. Now you had to raise, and when we were going to sign this in 2010, in 2008, we had to start the process of looking for sites, looking to raise money. And in 2008 and 9, it was the worst economy we've been in since probably the Depression. And so it was tough raising money. But we were able to, through the Governor Perdue did a great job helping us. We were able to get state property. He was able to help us build the parking deck with state money. And then we went to, the great corporate support that we're blessed with in Atlanta with, the Chick-fil-A's and the Cokes and the Kias and, Home Depot. And it goes on with Fortune 500 companies here that really stepped up and helped us. And so we were able to put something very unique. I called it, with our architects and our designers, I wanted to build an edutainmuseum. And that word doesn't exist, but it had to be educational, had to be entertaining, and then it had to be a museum. If we built a museum, we would have failed, because people want interactive now, and the young people want to, swipe, and they want to, be engaged. They want to be interactive with things. And so we were very successful in doing that. And we have a successful College Football Hall of Fame now.
It is beautiful. I've been there. Congratulations.
Oh, good. Did you like it?
Oh,
good experience?
It's amazing. It's a fantastic tribute to the game. And
good.
It feels appropriate to be in Atlanta, the sports capital of the world.
Well, thank you.
I want to talk a little bit nitty gritty about football and about bowl games specifically. As we all know, it's evolving. The industry is changing. There is a lot of tumult in college football specifically right now, between coaching contracts and NIL and the transfer portal. How are bowl games going to evolve to accommodate this chaotic time?
Yeah, another interesting question, and really relevant, because there's, I think, on the top side with us and the Rose and the Sugar and the Orange and the Cotton and Fiesta, we're in great shape being a part of the playoff. I think the middle bowls of, the Alamo Bowl, the Gator Bowl, the Pop-Tarts Bowl, Music City Bowl, all great games in great cities and meaningful in their communities. But you have players opting out, teams opting out, because, the playoffs are where people want to be. And so I worry about that part of the bowl system. And then on the lower tier of the bowl system, about 20 bowls are owned by ESPN, and they're strictly there for viewership. ESPN makes a lot of TV revenue off the advertising of those games because they rate pretty well during the holidays. They'll be better than NHL or NBA, playoff games, because people are at home. They're looking for things. College football is, fun. It's reality TV basically, and people love reality TV. And so they're going to be fine because ESPN is going to prop them up because it's a financial deal. I suggest a couple of things. One is that the group of 5, or now group of 6, I guess it is, I would suggest that they go and create their own national championship game. And whether that national championship winner becomes the team that gets into the CFP, that would be one suggestion I would make. The second suggestion is that those bowls that I just talked about, I would move them to the front of the season like we have with our kickoff game, and make them very interesting intersectional matchups between the Power 4 conferences that the CFP selection committee can use as data points to select their teams that will get into the playoff. Whether they stay at 12 or move to 16 or go to 20 or 24, I think they're beyond the 19 conference schedule, because not everybody plays everybody. They're going to need an additional data point of a good competitive game. And I think the other bowls can, in those respective cities, because the NFL is not playing, and a lot of those cities are NFL cities, it could be a huge way to start college football. Great TV ratings, get sponsors involved, and again, have a big impact on the CFP selection process.
That's a brilliant idea. And I love your idea about you mentioned it's like reality TV. As you obviously know, that the ACC was allowing the officials, we were listening in as they were
Yeah,
deliberating calls. That was fascinating. And that I think was very
yeah, it
effective.
was.
How else can we add this, real time behind the scenes reality TV aspect to a game?
Yeah, I think the TV networks are challenging themselves. Obviously, the pylon, cameras have been good. I still remember sitting with ESPN and with the major bowl games, and they said, "How else can we improve ourselves?" And I said, "Well, you've been very successful with Peyton Manning and Eli Manning on your NFL broadcast. Why not bring that to college? And have a college." Pat McAfee, and they brought Pat McAfee to, game day, but, there may be a broadcast that you can use and have Pat McAfee and have him have guests on during the broadcast of the college football. And so if you're playing, let's say Alabama's playing, all of a sudden you have Nick Saban come on, with Pat McAfee, and they're talking about what he did at Alabama, or Mark Richt during a Georgia game, or Bo Jackson during an Auburn game, or Herschel Walker during a Georgia game. So I think that would be a great way to bring a little bit more reality TV. And people love the stories, right? They love watching the game, but they love hearing the background of the stories. And so that'd be one way I would suggest to do it.
That would be so fun. I think we would love to hear Nick Saban kind of give some play-by-play analysis
Yeah.
um, there. Similar question as we talk about the bowls evolving. How is the role of president and CEO going to evolve for these bowl games? If we look at your resume, you bring such a strong sports marketing and athlete centric background. You've coaching in your background. What will the ideal resume look like for the next generation of bowl presidents?
Yeah, Steph, I think, as you said, we're evolving and you have to morph, right? I've always believed that you have to be in continual improvement. And if you don't, you stagnate, you die. And so, we back when I took this job in 1998, I was president of a sports council and also president of the Peach Bowl. And so you were able to leverage off those relationships to get things done and the corporate support you had. And it's interesting since we did that, Tennessee, the Music City Bowl's done that where they run the sports council and the bowl. The Gator Bowl's done that. San Diego's done that. Charlotte's done that. Orlando's done that. So they all followed our plan because we were so successful making Atlanta the sports capital of the world after the Olympic Games. With what we accomplished in the sports council, and then what we were able to do with the bowl game, that a lot of bowls are transitioning into and morphing into entities that oversee sports in that city. Why? They have relationships with the facilities. They have relationships with the corporate support, the government support in that city. So it makes all the sense in the world to do that.
That really creates a different profile for these roles. It might
Yeah,
not be
right.
for the traditional, I was a coach and now I can transition to this, or I am an athletic administrator out of college and I can transition to this. That requires a different level of background and knowledge.
No doubt about it. You've got to be a sports marketing businessman, and even athletic directors now, if they're not business people, and I think that's some of the things that's hurting college athletics is, ADs came from, a coaching background, a long time ago now that it's morphed a little bit more, but it needs to take on another evolution that these ADs now need to be revenue generators. And so they need to be creative. They need to bring concerts to their facilities. I mean, they have facilities, huge, great facilities on campus. Why not use those facilities for more than just a volleyball match or a baseball game or a football game, et cetera? And so whether it's concerts, whether it's creating new properties that you own, that you can get sponsored, that you create revenue streams from, that's the new AD business person that you need in place.
how do we ensure that we keep the student athlete or the pro athlete at the center of everything?
Well, that's the key, and that's the thing that I think we're missing most is that I worry about this generation of athletes having mental health problems in the future because you're putting 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, right, in positions where they're having a lot of money thrown at them. It's being 30% going to an agent that's not registered, right? That's a problem. Number two, they're throwing a lot of money into taxes, which they owe. Number three is they're becoming the breadwinners for their families in a lot of cases to put money back into their families. And 98% of these kids are not going to play pro. And so that money's going to dry up in 3 or 4 years. And because they're transferring so much and credits aren't following them, they're not getting their degrees. And so now you don't have a degree from a university. The money's dried up. You don't have the connectivity to the university because you haven't been there 4 years where you can meet alumni and the alumni want to take care of you because you supported them for their school for 4 years. You were there for 9 months. You played football for 9 months, and so there's no connectivity. And so now these kids at 18, 19, 20, they're not going to have the money coming in. They have no connectivity to the university. They don't have a degree. I mean, what are we setting them up for, right? They're going to have to go to work every day somewhere and maybe make $50,000, $60,000 in their first job. It's going to be a rude awakening. And so I really worry about the mental health of these kids. And I really believe that college athletics was set up, number one, to give somebody an opportunity for a scholarship, to get a free education, and then to get a degree. And now these collectives, and I know they've morphed, but these alumni, instead of giving money to pay for play for these players, they should be there when they graduate, whether it's a swimmer, a football player, a basketball, tennis, whatever, and give them jobs so they can be productive members of society. That's what the alumni should be doing. But we're not seeing that. And that's a problem to take care of the college athletes.
Such a great call to action, and that is there should be a collective that is set up to do just that.
Right.
Well, as we wrap up here, Gary, I could pester you with questions for hours and tap into your knowledge, but I want to end with this. Take yourself back to get to the Gary Stokan who was a basketball coach at NC State. Sit down with him on his first day. He's about to go out there and start coaching the Wolfpack, and say, what advice would you give to him with the knowledge you have today of everywhere that you're going to go and all of the journeys that you're going to be on in your career? What advice would you give to that version of Gary Stokan?
Well, I think number one is faith. You got to have a faith to have a strong foundation. Number one. Number two is your family is the most important thing you have. You know, it's funny. I was reading the other day about retirement and getting older. And someone said that, you know, when you start to get older and your kids are having their kids, you know, you start to think that, well, life is starting to be over. And then all of a sudden you get grandkids. And that newness, that youngness, that freshness, that enthusiasm in life hits you again because your grandkids, in my case, I've got a 10, an 8, a 7, and a 5-year-old grandsons. And they become your new life. You know, everything revolves around them. And so it brings you younger again because you better be young hanging out with 10 and 8 and 7 and 5-year-old kids. And so it's a neat transition I'm going through in life. As my business career ends, I'll have a consultancy, a company that, you know, if anybody needs me to, you know, consult with them, I'll be glad to give back, obviously, because that's the way I was taught. And, you know, the knowledge I have, I should give back because I want college athletics to be successful because I was a benefactor. So I'll have an LLC consulting company. But I'll spend a lot of time with my grandsons, and God bless my wife. Hopefully she's ready for me to be home more than I have been over the 47 years. But she's my best friend, and so I'll enjoy being with her. And then my 2 daughters and 2 son-in-laws. We're blessed. We've got a great family that's close. Everybody's 10 minutes away. And so, I really enjoy that. But I'd tell him to, number one, I have a couple sayings: enjoy the journey, right? You got to enjoy the journey every day, who you're with at that moment. You can't say, oh, when I retire, I'm going to do this. You may not get there. You may not have the money to do that. Your health may not last. So you got to enjoy every day and everything. I'm enjoying this being with you completely. I mean, this is where I'm focused and really getting a lot out of this. And so I would tell him to enjoy the journey. And the other thing that I tell people and I tell myself, and I end every email with, is have an attitude of gratitude. If you have a great attitude, a positive attitude, you got a chance of making something great happen. And life's going to smack you in the face. There's going to be adversity. But if you have a great attitude to move forward in a positive way, you got a chance to be successful. You can't let people, you can't let occurrences, you can't let life get you down, because people don't care, unfortunately. And especially in this society where everything's immediate gratification and it's all social media led. And that goes back to having that faith. You got to have a strong faith to have that attitude of gratitude. So I would say enjoy the journey and have an attitude of gratitude.
Such great advice, such good reminders for all of us, especially as we launch into bowl season and into the CFP. Gary Stokan, congratulations, 47 years in the industry, and we are excited to follow along with your next phase.
Oh, thank you, Steph. This was a great interview. I appreciate your questions, and I appreciate you having us and your interest in us.
This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.